Thank you.
White House Health Reform Director Nancy Ann DeParle spoke in Washington today, part of a series of briefings on health care. This is about an hour.
Getting health reform enacted this year. One reason, I think, is that all the groups who were on different sides of the table 15 years ago are now at the same table, working together and talking about how we can reach these goals. We've got not only NFIB, and I'm happy that Dan is here this morning, who's been very open and willing to work with us, but also the unions, the Federation of American Hospitals, the AHA, Families USA, Ron. And what I found remarkable is that no one wants the status quo. They don't start off talking about their position. They talk about how do we get everyone covered, how do we lower costs for businesses and families. And that's coming not only from the groups that are like Ron's group, Families USA, which is more of a consumer group, but it's coming from the providers themselves. They understand that healthcare costs are out of control and something that we have to get a hold of. The President's made clear, and you all have heard him, that he intends to get healthcare reform done this year. And unlike the effort 15 years ago, Congress has put its money where its mouth is, and it's already enacted a budget resolution that has healthcare reform, the healthcare reserve fund, in the budget. So if you look back, I think Drew's chart this morning was instructive. If you look back 15 years ago at where we were at this exact time in the Clinton administration, we're in a very different place. The administration's vigorously engaged with members of Congress as they work to draft legislation that's consistent with the President's blueprint and principles. And remember, they're starting in both the House and the Senate from the President's blueprint that he set out in the campaign and talked about for 2 years. Since I've been there, which is about a month now, I've met one-on-one with more than 40 members of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans. I have worked with many of them before in the past in my career, and I've found that on both sides of the aisle, they're in agreement with the President's principles. While they don't agree on every single point in his plan, they are all saying that they want to work with us constructively. And my experience in working with them has been that that's the case, that they've been more than willing to meet me halfway in the past, and I'm sure they're going to be able to this time as well. That's another way, I think, in which the process this year is very different from 15 years ago. That time, by the late summer and by early fall of '93, there were probably a dozen or more bills in the Congress, healthcare reform bills of one sort or another. But there wasn't really the kind of engagement that we see this year on the part of the committee chairs or staff working on a bill. It just wasn't the same thing. In fact, as you'll recall, in the Senate Finance Committee, which is a lead committee of jurisdiction here, the chairman did not agree that healthcare reform was a priority and wasn't particularly interested in moving forward on it, wanted to work on welfare reform and some other issues. By the time President Clinton sent a fully written bill, 1,400 pages or so, up to Congress, it was, I think, October or so of 1993. This time around, it's only April, and the difference is that the cicadas, Ron, are committee staff busily working away and engaged in the mechanics of sorting through technical aspects of bills and drafting specs and actual bill language. You may think this is a congressional recess this last 2 weeks and that folks are on spring break, but in fact, if you've been up to the Congress, you know that the committee staff members who work on these issues are meeting, they're working in their offices, they're very engaged in drafting specifications and looking at numbers and things like that. And the administration is providing them with what I'll call active technical assistance and guidance. We're meeting with them virtually every day. We're talking to them on the phone. They're working on the weekends. I mean, this is very active work that's going on. In the Senate, there are two committees of jurisdiction, the Health Committee and Finance, and they both are on track, and I think they expect to be on the floor with bills by the summer. In the House, there are three committees of jurisdiction, and we're seeing something that we've never seen before, which is that those three committees are working to report very similar or the same chairman's marks soon after the Senate acts, and I expect that to be around the August recess. It's been so far a remarkably harmonious process for that many committees and that many staffs to work together. They're deeply steeped in the details. You know that Senator Baucus has held more than 20 hearings in the last couple of years on various aspects of reform. You know that Senator Kennedy has for the past year been convening in his office meetings of stakeholders. I know Dan's participated in those, as has Ron. They've devoted a lot of time to meeting twice a week for hours with some strange bedfellows to working through towards some consensus on some issues. So these people have worked together for years, and they're professional, want to get this done, and that's what I'm seeing on the part of the staffs up on the Hill. As for me, I've been spending about 60 to 75% of my time with the staffs or members of Congress. Some of you have reached out and wanted to come in and talk to us about what the process is or what we're doing, and one reason I'm not there is because I'm often up on the Hill. The other place I've been spending my time is with business, labor, the AMA, the AHA, the NFIB, various groups who I've reached out to or who've reached out to me to talk about how we get this done this year. And I've also spent some time out on the road. The White House, as you know, kicked off this effort with the President hosting a forum on health care reform where we had more than 50 members of Congress as well as representatives of a lot of the groups to come in and talk to us about this. And it's very different than these kinds of things in the past. This was not just a speech from the President to everyone assembled and they all politely filed out. This time we asked them to break into groups and spend 2 hours around the table hashing through how do we lower costs, how do we get everyone covered. And, you know, I held my breath during some of those discussions because I wasn't sure what would come out, but I think you'd have to admit a lot of progress has been made. And then I've been to Des Moines, to Burlington, Vermont, and to Greensboro, North Carolina, to meet with Republican and Democratic governors and have large publicly attended meetings with people who are interested in this subject. And I've been struck by the stories that I've heard. And Dan, you're right. A lot of them are from small business owners. A lot of them are from people who work for small business or who are newly laid off and who are struggling to afford insurance premiums, people have been denied coverage or have had steep increases in their premiums because of pre-existing conditions. The stories are heartbreaking, and I think they're the reason why this president, who's spent the last 2 years out talking to the American people, has made clear that health reform must not wait, cannot wait, and will not wait another year. So I'm happy to try to entertain some questions now, Drew.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. For the cameras, we may very well know who all of you are, but if you just tell us who you are and where you're from, it'd be very helpful. And let us start with Mary Agnes right here.
Mary Agnes Carey with Kaiser Health News. A question for you about the financing of health care reform. It seems like changing the current treatment of tax benefits, I think you said the current tax treatment of health benefits, rather, is a must-have to finance health care reform. Do you agree with that? Do you think it will be in the bills on Capitol Hill? And what other financing mechanisms do you see coming forth?
Well, first, the President in his budget put forward his commitment to get health care reform done this year, and he did it in the form of a health care reserve fund, a $634 billion fund that is a down payment and a placeholder for working with Congress on the details of what the reform bill will look like. And as I said, the Congress has already put its money where its mouth is by saying, yes, that's in the budget. So that's the first step towards this. As far as the tax exclusion, remember that the President's plan is based on, he wants to build on the current system of employer-based coverage. And so he said for some time that he has serious concerns about any kind of financing that's built on dealing with that tax exclusion or somehow undermining it. He's very skeptical of those plans, and he's been clear about that. You know, that said, we're working with the Congress on how this will be financed, and a lot depends on, you know, the exact contours of the bill that they come up with.